T-shirts. You got to get yourself decorated. This way people will ask you, what is XRP? What is the quantum financial system? What is this? What is that? And you send them where? To QFS1776.com, where they need to immerse themselves, because we're going to burn down this system down to the ground. And out of the ashes will rise the phoenix. There'll be nothing to go back to. Believe me when I tell you that. Unified TV will take over Netflix. We're bringing in the next genre of movie producers and storytellers and actors and actresses. And we're telling the story of how the world is going to be on earth as it is in heaven. Jasara Nasara is coming. Don't make no mistake about it. Gold and silver, right down below. Promo code Mel Carmine. Make sure you use the promo code. Almost $8 billion in sales. We're direct to like a bunch of mints. We are the ones that can get you the gold and silver directly to your door, okay, at the cheapest price. Don't even waste your time looking for a cheaper price. It doesn't exist. Also, our Telegram groups down below. If you want to learn what's coming and you're sort of a little scared, I understand. Believe me, I was there too at one point. Our Patriots are literally waiting for you in the room. And if you need more than $10,000 worth of XRP or $1 million worth of XRP, you come see me. Send me an email at QFS1776@gmail, and we'll get you as much as you want. You ready to rumble?
Ready to rumble. Ready to StreamYard.
Yes.
We're going to blow up the internet.
How's my hair look?
Dynamite.
Okay, guys, by popular demand, we got him back. The one and only, the Lion, is in the house. Don't forget, I got to make a few announcements if you don't mind. January 21st, Dr. Sandra Rose Michael is going to be in the flesh at 166 Center Street in Cape Canaveral. That's going to be a live event that's going to start at 12 noon, probably going to go until about maybe 6 o'clock or so, and there's going to be a Q&A. It's going to be fabulous. If you guys know anybody who's in the Cape Canaveral area, you should tell them that the inventor of the scalar wave technology that allows the body to heal the body of all disease is going to be in town January 21st. Also, the XRP referral program at stayingalive.com, alive with 2 eyes, okay? You're able to now earn XRP as a referring agent of stayingalive.com anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter if you live in Japan, if you live in Europe, if you live in South America, Central America, anywhere, as long as you got internet and you're able to advertise this locally in the Brevard County. If they come in through your link, there's going to be a link down below when this video is over that gives you a tutorial, walks you through this process on exactly how to do that. And then you got all the marketing materials. Even Tony Robbins is on board with the scalar wave technology, if you can believe that. Amazing, amazing stuff. So, Diane, there is a lot of talk out there about ETFs. And there's a lot of talk about allowing Bitcoin, the original one, to survive. I'm desperate to hear your take on it. And also, obviously, not the second one. I think there was a sort of like a horse race. I don't know. It wasn't XRP the second? I believe it was the second one. It might have even been the first, for all I know. Just Bitcoin was the first one out of the gate. But I believe that Ethereum is also going to have an ETF attached to it. How do you see the whole thing playing out? Are they trying to stretch out the three-dimensional world so that the big boys out there can take their money and get the small people who don't do their homework to come in and sort of just, be the ones left holding the bag? And there might be a slaughter as far as I'm concerned. I think that's highly, highly plausible. What is your take on it?
Well, it's interesting, Mel. By the way, thank you so much for inviting me onto your show. Amber, thank you very much for all your technical help. You bringing this up right now, Mel, is very, very interesting. I'll tell you why. Over the weekend, the Lord started to give me some downloads on this because I saw this popping up. And I remember when this came up with regards to Grayscale. And the CEO was touting the fact that they had over 100 conversations with Gary Gensler. They were getting the thumbs up on everything that was, going to happen, good to go. And right up to the day before the announcement came out from Gensler. The next day, Gensler says, nope, no ETF. And the CEO went ballistic. He couldn't believe what just happened. Well, from my perspective, Gary Gensler is actually a good guy. And I'll tell you why. Ripple put up $40 million into a grant for him to teach blockchain at MIT. During the time he was there, he had his class. I actually have the recordings of his lessons. I have the transcripts, and it was in session 20. He said, "So class, now you pretend you have a coin and you want all the bankers to pick it up. What do? You follow another gentleman's path and you have to give up 50% of your equity." That was a clue, Mel. That was a clue. He was signaling to the market exactly how the SEC used to operate. That was its modus operandi. It was very much like the Italian mob, right? Somebody new comes on the block. They're trying to start a restaurant or a business, and what's the first thing that happens? The capos come in and press them and tell them they've got to pay, or they're going to burn them down. Well, this is exactly what happened with XRP. XRP got the pressure right up front. They came out with a plan to drip it out, and that was called the escrow. Because they weren't public, nobody would ever see who was able to acquire those tokens. Well, when the white hats came in, the military came in 2014, they took it over because it was originally a black hat operation. Once they took it over, now the good guys have it. Okay, that brings up a whole rabbit hole with regards to Jed McCaleb, et cetera, et cetera. But back to the ETF. Those ETFs right now, he had me watching 2 movies over the weekend. One of them was called Margin Call. The other was called The Big Short. And I don't know if you've seen either of those movies, but The Big Short is the whole story of what happened during 2008 with Lehman Brothers, with the collapse of the mortgage market and everything that went along with that. Talking about the CDOs and the mortgage-backed securities, et cetera, et cetera. Well, if all of these banks came in and bought Bitcoin, now's the time to unload it. They know it's going to zero. It's not ISO 222 compliant. With Nasara, days, weeks, and months away from being announced for us here in the United States, with a gold-backed currency, not a gold standard. We have gold-backed currency. And there's a big difference. We can't use gold standard because that was used during a fractionalized fiat banking system. A gold-backed system is exactly what it says it is. There's gold that amounts to every single dollar or every single digital asset that's out there in circulation. It's on the blockchain. Okay. So you own a ton of your bank and you own a ton of Bitcoin. You got in at the ground floor, you got your 50%, right? Well, you got to find somebody to take it off your hands. So what do? You create an ETF, which, by the way, is actually a quotient from a gentleman named Euler, spelled Euler. And what it does is it gives them the ability to take the money that they get from the buyers, cash themselves out, and hand over the worthless asset to an unaware, naive, and misinformed client. And they could care less. They've been doing it for years with stocks and bonds and everything else. And that's exactly what's taking place. So who's the winner? The bank. But here's the better part of the story. Go ahead and ask your question.
No. We're like we got like people things rolling like a clock here. There's a lot of people joining us as we speak. So what you're saying for the news guy that's just joining us, no ETFs will be allowed for Bitcoin going forward because supposedly Gensler said no, not going to happen.
Well, he said that a year and a half ago.
Okay,
they're kicking the can down the road. I think they're giving them all a lot of hope. But what's the justification to let them unload it when it's worthless?
Because they owe favors to the big boys, and the big boys hate to lose, and they have to do it on the backs of the little people. They're going to bring in the little people. And this is just speculation, but it's so highly plausible that it's almost factual. You think about this for a second, okay? The people are going to come in because they don't do their homework. They listen to CNN, ABC, always broadcasting crap. Okay, they come in, they don't do their homework. They buy Bitcoin, they buy Ethereum just on name recognition because they're beating that drum so hard that it's become sort of like second nature. It's people believe, oh, that's the one. Those are the ones we hear in the news. So they buy a bunch of it. Millions of potentially hundreds of millions of people will come in, buy small fractions of this stuff. The Bitcoin goes up to 100,000. The guys who already own the Bitcoin also own what? XRP. And they know that XRP is the one. Imagine this. They were able to sell something that moves at 3 transactions per minute. And they were able to sell it so well that it got to where it got, strictly smoke and mirrors, kabuki theater, as I like to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what they could do with a token that has all of the functionality of an XRP, which will be the final Bitcoin, in my opinion.
When you say they, who are we speaking to?
We're talking about the people who own Bitcoin right now, who are incredible salespeople because they were able to sell the hell out of a Bitcoin that does nothing. Okay. So a lot of them already own secretly. They own the one XRP. They also own the Bitcoin. They say, oh, wow, the ETFs are coming. I'm going to get out. I'm going to cash out at 100,000. I'm going to take that money. I'm going to start parlaying it over a little at a time and XRP, build up my XRP bags, and we'll go for the final ride. Meanwhile, the little guy is left holding the bag.
That's a scenario. That's a very plausible scenario.
Yeah.
In my opinion, they're going to kick the can down the road again.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going to come up and they'll say, no, this isn't right in the documentation. And you need to go back and rewrite it. Now, why have they waited so long? Everybody, over the last week and a half, reissued their applications with modifications. What were those modifications? Now, I did see one that was trying to raise, it said it had $4 million to start the fund. Mel.
Yeah.
$4 million. It's nothing. That's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, you got hedge fund managers that have that much money to start their own funds. You're talking a bank? And these are tier 1 banks because tier 1 bank is basically a bank that operates on its own capital, not deposits. Right. So right. if they've been acquiring all this XRP and they've been sitting on it, we know 2 things. Number 1, anything that's nefarious has already been clawed back. So there's probably a lot of it that isn't even eligible from the banks.
Right.
Now, if we're talking tier 1 banks, Jamie Dimon, he's gone. He's not around. He's been replaced. And so have so many of these other top bankers, the CEOs, CFOs, etc., because they were nefarious. They're not going to go into the new system. So we're not going to create a system that's brand new to operate like the old system. So, 2 things are going to happen. Either it's going to get kicked down, the can's going to get kicked down the road because there's a plausible reason to delay this. Now, if the military is keeping the market up so that the retirement accounts and the pension accounts, 401ks, etc., because they're all mirrored onto the QFS, that money is going to come out of the market, so to speak, or they're going to get credit for it. So they turn the market off completely, just shut it off. So there's no advantage to anybody that's short, right? There's no advantage to anybody that was trying to get, a position on to benefit from that. It just stops. Gives us 2 things: protects the market from short sellers. Number 2, it protects the value of the account for all the retirement accounts. See, we don't care about the equity accounts. We don't care about the bonds and people's accounts. That's all going to be locked up. They'll never get to it. So it'll just be lost value. But it's the retirement accounts that we have to protect. I went in and I looked at how much retirement money was lost during the big crash in 2008. $5 trillion was lost in retirement accounts. There's only 35 trillion total. So now all of those IRAs and retirement accounts, they've all come back up because we hit a new high back on December 14th. That December 14th was exactly, get this, Mel. The prior high was January 4th of 2022. It was 1 year, 11 months, and 11 days. And we had a brand new high on the market. That new high confirmed a prophecy from back in the 1700s that said that first mammon would be destroyed. New York City, because that's its mammon, right? That's what it lives off of, is Wall Street. And that the New York Stock Exchange would never, ever open again. So we're not bringing in anything from the old system into the new system. Why? Because with NESARA, with the restoration and the reclamation and the redemption, and add on top of that, the money for humanitarian projects, ZIM bonds, etc. People are going to have so much money, they're not going to need to move towards any kind of growth via making money off of somebody else's efforts or non-efforts. And that plays into corporate equity. The moment you remove corporate equity in the stock market, and now it stays in the company, what can you do with it? You can put it into the employees, you can put it into your R&D, you can grow the business, et cetera, et cetera. So you're not doing all those things that they did to cook the books to get Wall Street happy. So we eliminate so many things. So, back to your question about the ETFs. I think it's just gonna get frozen. Just get frozen because too many people stand to lose.
Yeah.
And they're not going through all this to.
Yeah. Do you think an ETF for XRP will happen?
No.
No?
It's not needed.
Okay.
And XRP really isn't in a league with any other coin. It was never created to do what these other coins are trying to do. See, it's kind of like when the internet first came out. Everybody's trying to jump in between and figure out how to get a piece of the pie. There's only one pie, and that's the QFS operating on the XRPL, not the XLML or the HBARL. It's the XRPL.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. It's the only way to communicate with the XRPL, which is the quantum financial system. And where's it going to operate, Mel?
On Starlink.
And Starlink is a quantum connection.
Absolutely. To the computers, one in Dubai, one in Spain, and one in Reno. And there's people out there, by the way, without giving them too much notoriety, we all know who we are talking about. But this particular person's out there saying that XLM is the one and XRP is going to go away. This is a person that was very, very hot on XRP a year ago that we don't talk to anymore. We know exactly what we're talking about. And by the way, this person also said that if you want a med bed, you have to, and she's out there saying this publicly. You have to travel to the moon. She's out there saying this publicly. That's laughable.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That makes no sense.
Well, never interrupt an enemy when they're hanging themselves. Let the show play out, right?
Right. Well, see, and the thing for your viewers to understand is we're talking about what's been, offered to us, which was never supposed to be offered to us.
Yeah.
When Donald Trump had his last rally, he was ready to sign the papers for NESARA. He was told he could not sign until after the election. Jerome Powell was ready to flip the switch in November of 2020. And it didn't happen. So he had to do what he termed, in the term is called Oh, I just had the name of it. What's it called? Uh, the overnight option. The overnight option is a cooking term, Mel, and it means when you let something rest for, 8 to 10 minutes. Well, in our case, it was 8 months to 12 months.
Right.
That was the original resting period, and everything was supposed to happen in December 2021. Nassara moved into the first position, and that was crucial because we needed to make sure that there wasn't any resentment from people
Hmm.
with regards to XRP if the buyback had happened first. There
Yeah.
would have been people that were just, carrying every bit of offense there was. Well, good people wouldn't make it through because of that. So by everybody getting Nassara, getting redemption, reclamation, repatriation, etc., before the buyback of XRP, everybody's going to be happy because they got tens of millions of dollars. Now, do they care if somebody made $3 million on their XRP? No, they're happy for them. But what if they didn't have anything and that person got $3 million? They'd have a fit. So
Absolutely.
that was one way to kind of, relieve that pressure.
Yeah. So is the Black Swan a real event? Is that happening? Is that going to come? Or is that maybe something that's been diminished and it's not going to be as bad as we all thought going in? I mean, there's some people saying, Mel, there's a lot of things that were supposed to happen and not happen. I would tell you flat out, whoever you are, whether you're a lady or a man, it doesn't matter, or something in between these days. You never know. But the reality is, we never made any dates on anything. As a matter of fact, I'm out here pounding the drum, telling people to stop following dates and don't follow people who give you a date that it's going to happen tomorrow. The reality is, I would love to call them out by name, but you guys know who they are. Okay, it doesn't really matter. So anybody who's saying that we were supposed to, be somewhere at a specific time, we never said that. We said this thing is going to play out. And I've said many, many times, nothing is going to happen without Trump coming back. And I'll say that forever. Nobody is going to become a billionaire under Biden regime. That's a fact. Whether he's a clone, whether he's a robot, whether he's an actor, it doesn't matter. No one's going to become a clone under this administration. This administration has to disappear in order for things to manifest.
Well, and this is what we know, Mel. We know that a couple events are going to happen simultaneously. Okay. Let's address your Black Swan question first.
Mhm.
I just did a post on that the other day, did a video. And what the Lord revealed was the Black Swan event has already happened. It's what's happening in the Suez Canal on the Red Sea. It's the fact that these cargo container companies, they've all turned away from taking any cargo from Israel. That in itself causes a 5 to 6 month delay in goods and manufacturing equipment. That's the Black Swan because nobody sees it. So what do? They switch the narrative over to the stock market. Well, we can't have the stock market crash because if the stock market crashed, it would negate the plan to secure the retirement money for everybody. So we're not going to have a stock market. And it's funny because we can look back in history and say, oh, look what it did here. Look what it did here. Look what it did here. That doesn't mean it's going to happen now. But there's enough people that don't have a history with understanding Wall Street. See, I remember in 1986, I was in the office. I just walked into the office. The partner of the accounting firm I was working at calls me into his office. He says, Dave, how's your day? I said, great. He says, not so good for your number one client. He just lost $1.9 million in a margin call. Every single day for the next 5 years, I had to report to him where the Dow Jones was when I got to the office. Now, did everything, go back up? Absolutely it did. But the point being is we can't use history to tell us what's going to happen now because we're not in those same waters. And of course, in my post, all the intel reports from 17, etc., made it very, very clear. We were to do one thing, Mel, watch the water, not the stock market. So if we don't think that's a big enough clue, then we're fooling ourselves, and we're listening to people that are just passing on the fear porn about Wall Street, and then using that to motivate people to buy gold and silver. That's all
Absolutely.
it is. It's a sell tactic.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, where do you think the XRP Army 1.0, do you think they actually believe a lot of the jargon they're talking about, which basically screams three-dimensional world? It seems that if they really do believe that jargon, that means they don't want to graduate out of the three-dimensional world. They want everything to stay status quo. Don't touch it, leave it alone. And they don't want us to graduate into, technology that's beyond our comprehensions, etc. So you think that some of them are just playing a part, like Digital Asset Investors, one of them? I'll give you an example. I've talked to him personally. I know for a fact this guy knows as much as you and I do, and then some. He is 17 all the way, no question about it. Okay. And so with that said, are some of them just playing a part because they built this massive database of 200,000 followers, et cetera, on YouTube and some of these channels, and they sound like CNN purposely, and they don't want to tell people what they really believe because they don't want to lose their channels, which I understand. We surf the gray line. You and I are ballsy. We go all the way up to the gray line, and we basically give them a little finger there and say, and then we go right back. We try not to cross it. Sometimes we maybe cross it a little bit, or we go right back, which causes our channels to survive somehow by the grace of God. But the reality is, why do you think they're beating this drum of the three-dimensional world as you and I and millions of us that are part of that 17th movement can see it so clearly that it's coming?
Well, I think it's a couple of reasons. Number one, just like you had mentioned, they're financially bound to the three-dimensional world with their viewership, their followers. They can't afford to point them into the direction of truth.
Mm-hmm.
So their focus is 100% on me. And it's very much like a lot of the, I'm getting ready to release a video tomorrow on my my debt clock decode. But one scripture keeps coming up with regards to Jesus in the temple and how he turned over the tables of the money changers. They're no different. They're money changers. So they're asking people to pay, whether it's in a Discord or, through their compensation with YouTube, to click the button to get information that is very, very limited in scope. Now, I will tell you this. I'm the one that shared the information up front with DAI with regards to Ethereum and Bitcoin. When God first brought me over in April 3rd of 2021, I read him in on what the Lord had said about them, about the sting operations. I termed ETHgate. Now he won't admit that. He won't admit that I gave him the read in on what was going on. But I will tell you this, he's done a fantastic job with it. It was for him. It wasn't for me. And God said, give it to him. He's the one I want to run with that. He's done a marvelous job. But, at some point you have to look at the truth and say, whose banner am I carrying? Am I carrying my banner, or am I carrying the Lord's banner?
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, what's going to happen, Mel, when this is all done? What is he going to do? He's not going to run a channel because there's nothing to talk about.
Exactly. We
So
we might become food podcasters or something.
Well,
we might have to find a new line of work, because when everybody's got there and we are right, and the Jasara becomes the thing, and the XRP becomes what we're talking about, and everything manifests the way we see it, what is there left to talk about? Like you said, absolutely nothing. I told my wife, I'll probably at that point, obviously, we will have the wherewithal, right, to be able to travel around the world, and I'll interview every billionaire that I've created. Maybe, we'll do that. You know what I mean? But it will be face to face.
Well, but see, you're going to have a humanitarian project too.
Absolutely.
They're not.
Many,
They're not.
several.
They're just going to take their money and run.
Yeah.
We're committed to humanity. That's the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
We're doing this for humanity. Humanity is the winner at the end of all this.
Totally. Totally.
And
Let me ask you a question before I forget. My friend Mackenzie, I won't give her a full name. She's actually going through my broker right now over in the UK, buying a large sum of XRP, the one, for the people who don't want to go crazy using Uphold and all the cabal companies. She wants to know, she has 215. I'm going to make you laugh. I know what the answer is already, but she said she has 215 Zim notes, right? Zim notes, and each one is $100 trillion, and she wants to know if she has enough.
yes.
You would think?
Oh yeah.
She's got enough,
Yep.
right? There you
She
go,
has enough.
Mackenzie. You get your answer.
You have one, and you have enough.
Yeah, one. Well, if you got 215 notes and they're each 100 trillion Zims, wow, that's huge.
Yep.
That's
And
huge.
this is what you want to find. This is what you want to ask her, Mel. If she bought them, she needs to make sure that she has her invoice. She has a copy of her invoice in with her information.
Yeah.
When she goes to the redemption center. And number two, when she finds out what they're actually worth, number one, she gives God all the praise and glory. And number two, she gets ready for the ride of her life, because she's got a 200-year legacy business to operate, because the majority of those Zim bonds has to be used for humanitarian purposes. Now, in my last video I did on the Zim bonds, there's between 5 and 20% that's going to be a personal portion.
Right.
And the remaining balance will be what has to go into your humanitarian project. Now, if she doesn't have a humanitarian project to take with her,
Oh, she has plenty. She has plenty.
well, she has to have them down in that template form. You can't just have something, you write it down, you get there. No, you have to show them proof that you've already set up on
She's
paper.
got your whole program, and she's
Okay,
been
good.
through the whole thing. She's got it all.
Okay.
She's got it all down to a
Okay,
science.
good.
She's just waiting for the call.
Great. No, then she's in great shape. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Happy to hear that.
She's
She's gonna
ready
need
to
a lot of
roll.
help. She's gonna need a lot of help too. A lot of
Right.
integrators. A lot of
Yeah.
integrators with
Yeah.
that amount of money.
It was surprising what you said early on, though. By the way, there's over 800 people watching us right now on my channel. I don't know about your channel.
Well, we should probably at least have over 5,000
Yeah,
by the
easily.
time we're done. Yeah.
Yeah, easily. So it's surprising you said early on that Ginsler can end up being one of the good guys. I've heard that even Oprah Winfrey could be one of the good people. It's going to be surprising who is going to be a white hat and who's going to be a black hat. And we don't understand some of these roles and why they're being played in such a way. And we may not be maybe intelligent enough to read between the lines, or maybe they've sent out the fog to fog us, you know what I mean? And to keep us dazed and confused as to what and who's playing what role and for what reason.
Well, in 2018, and I think I saw, DAI put this video up, because again, the attempt is we need a villain. We got to find a bad guy, right?
We need a boogeyman.
Right, and we'll make that Gary Gensler. But
Yeah.
when Jay Clayton dropped that lawsuit on December 21st, I'm sorry, December 22nd, and I've shared this with you too, that was the day after a 7,885-year agreement expired. That agreement
Right.
was between the devil and God. God gave him 7,885 years to still kill and destroy. And the Mayans had Enoch to show them how to build their calendar. So there was always a permanent record of the timeline. He didn't file that lawsuit before that date expired. That was December 21st, 2020. So that's where time begins for us. And the moment that was dropped, XRP went into protective custody. And that's really the role that Gary's played to keep everybody away from XRP, to make it look like it's not important. It's damaged
Right.
goods. But we're going to come to find out that, again, his role was to look like a bad guy while he was keeping everything protected.
Right.
Because at MIT in 2018, in one of the video clips, he says, XRP is not a security, Ethereum is. So how do you take a man at that level who's now teaching blockchain technology at MIT, and now he comes into the SEC and he flips his position 180 degrees? A man of his caliber doesn't do that. Just like you wouldn't change your view of XRP.
Absolutely not.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
My point is, it's all about protection. I mean, there's over 900 people that have been in witness protection, from Elvis to, many, many people we're going to come to find out didn't really die, but they're still alive. Princess Diana, etc.
Well, we got somebody here asking if the Vietnamese dong is going to be part of the humanitarian project. The answer is that the humanitarian project is your part to do when the dong matures. But yes, the dong will be part of the reevaluation, I'm sure, and you'll agree with that, correct?
Yeah, the dong, the dinar, the bolivar. There's one bond and 8 currencies in the first basket.
Okay.
So again, remember, the ZIM is a bond. It's not currency. And that was part of a video that I did where I actually identified the fact that the Chinese or the Asian elders, they made an agreement with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. They bought all of the assets above the ground. Then they turned around and they made an agreement to repurchase every single ZIM bond. They're paying for it, the Asian elders. Now, the Asian elders have the equivalent of 100 quadrillion metric tons. 100 quadrillion metric tons, Mel, of gold that's already mined and stored. That amount of gold would be a 10.5-mile cube. High, wide, and deep. That's how much gold that they have. Gold is a self-replenishing natural resource that comes from deep within the earth. And they actually have access to that. Think about that. It's not scarce.
Absolutely.
And
No, we've been living in a world of scarcity because somebody else was allowed to paint the picture, and we allowed them to paint that picture of scarcity. But there's no scarcity.
there's no scarcity.
Yeah. Just like a lot of the podcasters out there are trying to protect their little. Oh, this is mine. Nobody can touch.
Mhm.
You're crazy. There's 8 billion
Mhm.
people on the planet, guys. Get real.
Well, I liked your comment on one of the videos you just did the other day where you were talking about oil, and you talked about it, going to $1.25 a gallon.
Yeah.
It's going to go to about 35 cents because
Well,
oil is also a self-replenishing byproduct within the earth that will never run out.
yeah, absolutely. And
So
the
what
reality is, yeah, and the reality is there's so much oil that if we wanted to run on this, commodity, call it whatever you want to call it, black gold, we could run on it for 200 years, maybe
Forever.
more.
Forever.
Yeah.
Well,
So
2004, I was in Jerusalem, and a gentleman that was on our trip from Texas, and maybe he's watching, he and his wife worked for a company called Daystar, and it was Christian broadcasting. He had a word from the Lord to call this gentleman, and he waited 6 months. And the Holy Spirit finally told him, call him today. He has his number on a little piece of paper. He calls him on the phone. The line rings, and the man answers the phone and says, what took you so long? I've been waiting 6 months. He knew who was calling him.
yeah.
He then invites him down to the Negev Desert. And again, in 2004, they found oil in the land of Israel, and nobody knew about it. It took 5 years before it went public. But this is what he told me when he got back. He says, Dave, they're telling me that they have found the largest caldera of oil underneath the land of Israel. It's bigger than anything that's ever been discovered. And here's how I described it. He said, Dave, imagine this like huge balloon, deep, deep, deep in the earth. And up from the balloon are 2 straws. And at the top of the straws are little pools of oil. And this is what Saudi Arabia and the other countries are tapped into. And he said, in prophecy, they're talking about that there would be a great shaking and those straws would break. And there would be no more oil going up to the top of the straws. So that those Middle Eastern countries would no longer have access to that caldera or that, balloon of oil. So I was writing my white paper on this, and I come across an article the very next day written by a gentleman, and here's a picture of what I was told in 2004, right there on the screen, the balloon with the 2 straws, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, hey, it's all true. It's all true. I mean, I said this on Dr. Kia's show. Maybe you saw it.
No,
we
I
know
did
that
not.
we know that God's a keeper of all his promises. So if there was anything we needed on earth, Mel, he already put it here
Oh,
before
absolutely.
we even got here.
Yeah.
So he made sure there was plenty of water. And all the water's under the ground.
There is plenty for everybody of everything. We're just the pioneers of pushing the envelope that hopefully will manifest into something greater than we can even comprehend. But the reality is, we want the technology. We want flying cars. We're tired of driving an extension of a Model T Ford. Yeah, it's got air conditioning and a stereo system and all the whistles and bells, but it's still an extension of a Model T Ford. And someone's controlling the fact that we're still scraping the earth like a bunch of turkeys, whether you like to believe that or not. That's true. So, look, at the end of the day, let's get back to Iraq. Iraq is making a lot of noise. There's no question about it. But again, and I'm sure you'll agree with me 1,000%, 100,000%, until a certain individual gets out of the White House, whether he's a clone, nothing's going to happen. But it does sound like they want, if you really listen to what they're saying, hey, we're ready. We want to go. Let's get the show on the road already. Get rid of whoever you got to get rid of in the White House. We want to reevaluate. We want to get rocking, right? But until that happens, until that main event happens, and that's going to be the main event as far as I'm concerned, that nothing of great significance is going to happen. So all you guys out there, I'm ordering you. I'm ordering you to stop listening to people that tell you it's going to happen tomorrow at 12:59 a.m. or 12:59 p.m. or whatever. Stop it. Okay, that's insanity. We got to stop the insanity right now.
Well, here's what we know. We know about January 6th. We know that was, theater, kabuki. We know that certain things have already been proven. 46 of 50 states have already canceled their certifications with regards to the elections and said it went the other way. They decertified their votes. The evidence supports itself. SCOTUS has now noted that they can rule on January 6th. And they also have the Brunson case that they can rule on. So they've got a double barrel shotgun. And any more ammunition beyond that isn't necessary. So either one of those situations immediately shuts everything down. And he can be out of office along with Congress in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That fast. So it isn't this big, long, laborious task. It's just, like you said, there's a timeline.
Yeah.
And things have had to take place. The biggest holdup, 2 holdups. Number one, Iraq had to complete their budget. And they completed their budget on the 20th of December. So beginning on the 21st, they had to spend their entire annual budget before the end of December. So they had 9 days to do that.
Right.
The dinar is already reported on the Forex screens,
That's correct.
and the rates are very good. The dong, very good. Bolivar, going to surprise a lot of people. That's the sleeping giant next to the Zim bond. Now, I'm not encouraging people to go out and buy currencies. So I'm not trying to give investment advice here. Because Mel, we don't give investment advice,
No.
right?
No.
What we do is we speak educationally so that people can make an informed decision for themselves. Okay. But what do we know about Zim bonds? Go watch the video I put out on the Zim bond. It'll knock your socks off. I did an interview with Dr. Pruitt. It says right on the Zim bond, Mel, payable to the bearer on demand. It's a demand bond. It can't be canceled. It can't be altered. It can't expire. And this is why the Asian elders stepped up and told the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, we got it. We'll take care of it from here. When it comes, see, they're God's storehouse. God chose them to store up the wealth, and he made sure they had a direct supply to it. So they would have enough to cover everything that was stolen in every generation of each person's lineage, going all the way back to Adam and Eve. Now we know in the Bible, in Proverbs 6:30, 31, it says, don't worry about the person that breaks into your house because he's hungry. But once he's caught or known, he has to repay sevenfold. And even if it includes his house. So just for education purposes, sevenfold is not 7 times. So if someone stole $1, 7 times would mean you get a return to $7. Sevenfold means you take $1 times 7, then you take 7 times 7, so 49 times 7. You do this through 7 iterations, and after you complete that 7th fold, that $1 is now $823,543.
What
That's
measures do you think Nasara and Jasara, as far as a global law, will have in place as a ironclad law that they owe us X and they got to pay all of it? Is there going to be some laws you think in place? You talk to God, and I'm not saying I believe you. I'm not saying I don't believe you. I'm saying I believe that what you're telling is true, but I have no way of verifying. Just like, well, when I saw God in the sky with the X, that was pretty verifiable, right? But yours is a little bit different. But what do you think? Do you think there's going to be some ironclad laws in place that are going to say, hey, we don't give a crap, you have to pay up? Obviously, the IRS, who is guilty of being the world's most successful illegal collection agency, okay, they have a lot of money to pay back. So just that alone. I mean, some people have a hard time wrapping their mind around the fact that there's going to be a new sheriff in town with new laws, and the guns are going to be pointing the other direction this time around, and that they have to pay repercussions to all of us. That would be the right thing. But is that really, truly going to happen? Are we going to get all of it? Because just that alone, 7 times 7, 49, 7 times, holy moly, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, I did it again. I did a video on the 3 payouts. One of the payouts is Nasara. That payout was determined based upon a private meeting I was at in 1994 in Los Angeles with Dan Rostenkowski, who was the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. He worked directly with Kennedy.
Right.
He's the one that basically brought all the tax reform to taxpayers over all the years. He was in for 36 years. He was a Democrat, by the way. And he brought in all the tax reform to reduce the taxes back to a maximum of 28%, capital gains, etc. Now, if you take that, he told us in that meeting everything that we can now say is Nasara. He said 14% national sales tax. He said no income tax. He said no tax on investments. Social Security would be reformed, et cetera, et cetera. But he says we don't have a name for it yet, and it's about 30 years away. Well, this is 30 years right now. And then I can go back 20 years from then, back to 1974. In 1974, my brother-in-law told me about a gentleman named Tex Ritter. He was a singing cowboy. Tried to get into the Senate, didn't make it. Very politically connected. So he was telling everybody in 1974, Mel, that they were going to get rid of corruption, get rid of the drug money, et cetera, by converting to new money, and we would have 5 days to go to the bank to turn in our money. So he couldn't walk in with a suitcase with $1 million because they'd put you in the small room. They'd interrogate you, and because you couldn't prove where it came from, none of it would count, and they would just simply take it. Well, aren't we kind of doing that with NESARA? You got to be of the right mind and the right heart to go through the Redemption Center, because if you're nefarious, just like we found out with the Zim bonds, tier 3. These are the people that have cases or pallets of Zim bonds. There were 30,000 representatives that went to turn these in for exchange. Over 50% of them were clawed back with no payment because they were nefarious. Either the people were or how they acquired them. And that's what's opened up the doorway for us as legitimate owners without nefarious actions to get a bigger personal portion. Originally, it was just going to be 5%, Mel. Now it looks like it's going to be 20%. That's a big difference when we know what the value of that Zim bond is.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's
listen,
a hallelujah.
Yeah. By the way, the video you're talking about is with Rita I just did. Rita and I definitely capture lightning in a bottle when we're together. We definitely have incredible chemistry, just like I do with you. But the reality is that oil went -0, by the way. And that can only happen for one reason. And it can only happen under one particular regime. That's the Donald Trump regime and nobody else. Nobody could bring a barrel of oil. They were paying people to take it away, if you really want to know the truth. That's a fact.
Yeah, minus $38 a barrel.
Right. Okay. So mainstream media, in my opinion, whether it was tomorrow, next week, next year, and I'm prepared. I'm not trying to be a party pooper here. Okay. Believe me, I've been here for 8.5 years. Okay. It's going on 9 years soon. Okay. It's a long time to be in this, what I'm in, but believing that this thing is going to come to a head at some point. But I still am a firm believer that this all needs to be reported on mainstream media. And it's probably going to have to be the army storming the newsrooms. You're not going to see, Sean Hannity, and you're not going to have Anderson Pooper and all these idiots reporting the news. It's going to be new people, but it's got to come through that source, because whatever, you have probably, I don't know, a good percentage of normies right now that are on the fence, and they're about to fall over to our side. And that's what's going to make them fall over to our side, is to report the news, even though you and I have become a voice. A lot of people like, Dr. Pruitt and so on have become a voice. They have to hear it through the proper channels for it to be legitimate. What is your take on that?
I think everybody that needed to hear it, Mel, has heard it. It's not a message for the masses, and I'll tell you why. I was getting a little frustrated with people not wanting to accept the value for XRP based upon the years of research and effort and revelation that I received with regards to that. Right down to the point where the Lord pulled me aside and he goes, Dave, he goes, this journey was never about trying to convince people about the price for XRP. It was to present the information so that my called and my chosen would see it, and they would know in their heart it was right. And then guess what he did, Mel? He turned around and he says, you know what? I'm going to allow everybody to pick and choose the price for XRP that's in their heart. And that's what they'll receive. So it wasn't about getting to the point where everybody had to know it was $1 million a coin. It was, what's in your heart, Mel? Because away from everybody, it's going to be you and the machine. And you're going to enter in what you want per token. And as long as you don't go over $1 million, it's going to go right through. We know that a very, very large percentage of people have a range that they find acceptable for their XRP. And I'm speaking to the XRP Army 1.0 or even 2.0 or 4.0. They suffer from all of the years of MK Ultra programming, Stockholm syndrome, and the need to have it at what they want it to be. Now, if they want $10, they'll get $10. If they want 100, they'll get 100. So it doesn't matter what God's put in your heart for the price for XRP. And that's what he wanted me to understand. And if it was a great weight that was lifted off of me because of that. I'm an accountant by trade, over 37 years. Tax accounting, forensic accounting, worked with the FBI. So I know how to calculate numbers. I mean, we started with XRP. God brought back the fact that I had been in that meeting for Nasara. Then he turned around and he says, okay, I'm going to go show you the price for gold on the XRP. Because the gold has to back everything, right? So the gold backs XRP. So we calculated everything. I've been just revealing this, and there's another giant reveal coming tomorrow with the decode. But at the end of the day, what is this all about? It's about us leaving this Luciferian, deep state cabal, Khazarian mafia banking system, fractionalized money, and going to a gold-backed currency around the world. So that every day, every moment, every second, every single transaction in the world, Mel, gets reported, recorded, and stored on the XRPL. But it has to go through XRP to get there. And that's how we keep the level playing field. That's how we keep everything honest. The IRS, the 80,000 IRS agents that JB was talking about that he hired to go after taxpayers, Trump hired them. He brought them in to get training because they're the ones that are going to go out in the field to contact the companies that don't remit the national sales tax of the 14%. And then when something happened back then and everybody had to take a time out, they were just sent home. So they're still there. They're still trained. They can carry a gun. They're ready to go. And that's what their purpose is. So, the IRS is just being repurposed because there isn't any income tax, period. And Nasara does away with all that. It does away with that theft.
I have friends of mine who are business people who have come to the conclusion that you and I are right about a lot of things, including the IRS, and have called me 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, a year and a half ago, 6 months ago, saying, Mel, I'm not reporting my taxes. I'm stopping the insanity. I'm stopping the hemorrhaging. And I say, good for you, all you guys. You see, if you want the monster to go away, if you guys all stand up and say, you know what, no more. You're not getting our money anymore, because you're only paying I'd be willing to bet quite a lot that you're paying some law firm that's acting as the IRS, because nobody's home. We know that for a fact. By the way, we just went over 1,000 people watching on my, so I'm sure you probably got at least that and then some on your channel. So, but anyway, you're right. I don't care where you're looking at this fight from. This is a fight between good and evil. You know what I mean? And
right.
and I don't care who you are, whether you're an atheist, whether you're a Catholic, a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim, you know that this is a fight against good and evil. Someone's got to win and someone has to lose. And from where we stand, we're winning by a lot. I don't even think the other guys have scored any points, to be quite honest with you. I think Guantanamo Bay is a very real thing.
Well, it's so real, Mel, that there were 8 barges back in May and June and into the early part of July that parked, and they actually put people on them, took them away. One was in Manhattan Harbor, and one of the gentlemen that got on there was Jamie Dimon. He was seized and he was put on there. I joked with Dr. Pruitt that it was like the white tanker hospital that showed up in New York and nobody got on it.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't figure out why, because it was supposed to help people. Well, the same type of situation. All those 8 tankers left and were headed to Guam. And on the 9th of July, there was an event that happened where craft were seen caught on NOAA's solar camera going into the sun. Thousands of these little white objects going into the sun. It almost blotted out the camera. And the gentleman that actually did the video, he was having a meltdown doing his video because he had not watched the material. He was doing it as he was doing it. And I remember that day, it was a Saturday, and he's like, oh my gosh, what just happened? What just happened? Well, they kind of just took him right to the lake of fire.
Let's talk about the ETs that were supposedly spotted down in Bayside, Miami 3 days ago. This is a big show. This is a big showdown. Over 200 cars, police cars. You know what that looks like from an aerial shot? Unbelievable. Surrounded Bayside. Nobody can escape. Anybody who had a cell phone had to literally go through a checkpoint, and those videos got deleted. There's kids walking around with boxes that supposedly glow in the dark. Okay. And I think they created these things out of CGI. I think what do they call them when they're playing a movie in midair? There's a name for that. I can't think of it. Maybe you guys can give me the name of that.
Like blue beam?
Like a blue beam movie. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And you're telling me that if there was a mass shootout in Bayside, God forbid, instead of, a government sponsored shooting, okay, in one of these things, okay, there would be possibly 50 to 100 cop cars. Maybe that's stretching it. No more than that. But for them to send out every single cop car, every single police they had on the force to this event, to me was a practice run for something much bigger, number one. Number two, nobody asked the question. Okay? The question, who were those kids with those boxes that glow in the dark? Who were they? Are they CIA? Are they CIA trained? Are they kids of CIA agents? Who are they? Why were they able to talk to some people and scare them into oblivion to the point where people that were reporting the day before that they were there all of a sudden changed their story saying, what are you talking about? I wasn't even there.
Really?
Oh, this is big. This is huge.
Wow.
We're talking about they saw, 8-foot monster aliens that sort of moved around like jello that didn't have any bones. This happened in Bayside. I used to hang out in Bayside. This is my old stomping ground.
Well, they said the last thing that would happen was a alien invasion.
Right. Is this something? Is this a practice run? Is this a training for the Miami Police Department for something much bigger? I think
we know that all law enforcement has already been trained by the military for the emergency broadcast alert.
Yes.
I should say emergency broadcasting system alert.
Right. It was a hologram. That's it. Somebody just put it in there. It's a hologram. It was a hologram. It was a movie that plays out in thin air. We've seen, holograms of the Pope supposedly talking to a bunch of people in the square, in the piazza, okay, in Rome, and then half of his shoulder disappears like it's happening right now because this is a green screen. And there's another saga to my chair that I will get into at some of the later podcasts. But think about that for a second, okay? They have the technology to pull the wool over anybody's eye and scare the living daylights out of anybody.
Well, and remember, and I credit Coach JV with this. He said, when they're trying to make you look left, look right.
Right.
Because they're trying to hide something.
Oh, absolutely.
So whatever was going on there was an attempt to get everybody's eyes off of something else.
Yeah.
And again,
by the way, before I forget, XRP convention, are you going?
When is it?
The 2nd and 3rd, I believe, of May. We're Amber and I are booked. We're going.
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard, much about it. Nobody's called to invite me. So we'll see.
I'm inviting you. You.
Okay. All right.
Yes. And then I'm driving across the desert. My mom's probably watching right now. And then I'm going to go visit my mom for a couple of days in California while I'm there.
Well, I guess the question would be are we there to talk about XRP?
Wouldn't it be nice? Right? That before May 3rd, because I don't believe in dates or it's going to happen tomorrow. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you guys flat out. I'm going to tell you this one time. If someone told me something's going to happen tomorrow, it didn't happen tomorrow, and they're going to say it's going to happen next week, and it didn't happen next week, and they give me another precise time, I give them 3 strikes, you're out. You guys should stop following these guys. Go to their channels, unsubscribe, and get away from this. This is insanity. It's going to happen. I will tell you, the Pizza Man and XRPLion here to tell you it's absolutely 100 trillion% going to happen, but it's going to happen when a certain man with that beautiful blonde hair gets back. And not before.
Well, he hasn't left, and I don't know if you're
He's
aware of
left,
this or not.
absolutely.
No, but the other day, Maine filed to remove him from the election.
Oh yeah,
and in their paperwork, it said, well, he can't run again because he's already run for 2 terms. Now wait a minute. The public says he got 1 term. The state of Maine is saying, no, he's still the president. They cited him in their paperwork to the court as the commander-in-chief, saying, no.
When he leaves Mar-a-Lago, right, to go somewhere, there is an entourage a mile long. Not to mention that there is at least, 100 motorcycle cops in front and another 100 behind him. And there's artillery like you can't believe, and bulletproof cars and all kinds of stuff. When you retire to be the president of the United States, you're lucky if you get 4 Secret Service agents that are assigned to you at 8-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, period.
Right. Well, he's still the CIC, commander-in-chief. That never changed. He just turned it over to the military to conduct the operations that needed to be done to round up the nefarious people. See, their operations started back as early as 2009.
Yeah.
Bitcoin and Ethereum are just big sting operations.
Look, I'm a firm believer, and I've said this many times, and I'll say it for the newest person that's just getting here for the first time, because I think it's another highly plausible story, so plausible that it's practically factual. David Schwartz puts a patent on blockchain technology. You guys have heard me say the story, and I'll say it again for the newest person. 1988, correct?
1988. How old was he, Mel?
A lot younger than he is right now. Probably like
he wasn't 20. Even 15. He wasn't even 15 when he did.
Okay, I know he's like in his 40s now, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yep. So he puts a blockchain patent on blockchain technology. Who is this guy? If he's 15, who is he? Is he CIA? Is he a guy from the inside? Who is he? Is he one of the good guys from the CIA? There's good people in government.
When he was on the team for Bitcoin, there was 4 people.
Right. So
William Finney.
He puts a patent on blockchain technology. Fast forward 1999, he goes to work for one of those 4 or 5 letter agencies called DARPA. 2007, 2008, what happens? Right? Bitcoin is born in 2009, 2007, 2008. The housing crash. There are no coincidences. he got the download to play with Bitcoin to see if he can figure it out. And once they realize, okay, he's figured this one out. Now let's give him the real toy to play with called XRP. Let's see if we can figure that one out. That one's scalable to 3.5 trillion transactions per second. Bitcoin is still at what? 3 transactions per minute. The Lightning Network doesn't work. It's a disaster. And it doesn't fix anything. That's why they want to attach an ETF so that the big boys can walk away with all the money and the little guy are going to get crushed.
Right. Yep. But where does that Bitcoin reside? On the XRPL. And who knows where every single coin is? David Schwartz. He can run a query. Matter of fact, you've probably heard of Clinton Donnelly. He's the IRS expert on Twitter,
right,
for digital assets.
Right.
He actually, it's probably been about a year now, but he said, he goes, Dave, I got a brand new program where I can trace back the history on any token that a person has to find out if there's anything dirty in the chain. Think about that. I mean, it's like everybody thinks they're operating anonymously. No, those digital assets, you and I hold digital assets. Everybody else has crypto because it means in the vault, right?
Yeah.
And like what Uphold did.
Yeah.
Just created a vault. They give you 2 keys and you need 3 keys to move your money out. Why would they ever do that? And they call it the vault. But here it is. I mean, how do you think they found out that all the exchanges were staking our XRP while we were hodling? David Schwartz. He runs a query to say, where are the coins? We just sent 200 million. We just sent 5 million coins to XYZ exchange.
Right.
Well, why are they now over at another exchange? Well, because they staked them to the other exchange for the traders. They were taking all the staking money. And that's when, at the end of 2019, Ripple cut off all transfers to exchanges and said, guys, and we didn't find out about this until 2022. And Brad said, hey, guys, if you want to use the XRP, you can come and get it from us. We're not going to give you inventory that you turn around and stake. And that was a big fiasco that nobody wants to touch, because Uphold was actually restricting people from moving their XRP off the platform with no rhyme or reason. Just, no, we can't do it. Well, it's because they were locked into staking contracts, Mel. And they couldn't get out.
Yeah.
So they had to wait for the contracts to expire to have the tokens available to give to people to move out of their accounts. Because anybody that has an account on exchange, it's not yours. It's in an aggregated account, meaning they took everybody's accounts and they put them into their account in their name, and they just keep a registry number to show how much a person actually has.
Right.
So if the market shut off tomorrow, they don't have to honor giving that back to you. They just simply say, the records were destroyed. We have no way of identifying what you had. Can you provide us with records? Well, nobody prints off anything. It's kind of like the banks, right? You get an e-statement now. Nobody has those e-statements. Nobody downloads them. Nobody prints them off. Well, same thing. The same thing's going to happen when, they turn the switch. You better be able to prove what you have.
Exactly.
So,
you think just in the event that this thing is going to happen faster than even I think, even though I'm prepared to go till the end of 24, the end of 2025, the end of 2026, whatever it takes. I'm here to collect, as my shirt says. We're here to collect. See that? Isn't that a beautiful shirt?
I like that.
Okay,
we
are here to collect. Okay,
get one of those shirts, by the way.
Yeah, the reality is, wouldn't it be nice if they announce Trump coming back, Nasara Jassara, and the Vegas convention is maybe 2 weeks away? That would be nice. That would be maybe Brad Kimes will call us and say, hey, you got to fly in the chair. You guys were the ones that are beating the drum the loudest about Nassar Jassar. You're right. Bring in the chair. Wouldn't that be nice?
If he was a man of honor, he would already have a chair there for you, Mel.
Well, that's okay. You know what?
That's not.
We won't serve wine until it's time, and we will get our day in the sun. Believe me.
That's right. That's right.
You know, this has been fun. I had a lot of fun. I think we should do more lives, and we need to practice because we always have trouble finding all the buttons to go live. You notice every single time. So, say, Mom, if you're watching, hello, Mom, in California. So and that's
wonderful interview, Mel. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Listen, I had fun, and we got to do it again because I think we should do maybe a live with maybe one or two other people that I think would fit just right with you and me that are along the same thinking. This was very, very different than any other show I think we've done in the past. I think this is our first live, correct?
It is first live.
Yeah, it is our first live, and I'm sure it's not going to be our last. So I got to get used to going live. That's where the fun is at, they say. So, and if you guys know,
there's no editing. There's no editing.
Exactly. It's no editing. Bingo. And if you guys know how to find Dave, tell them where your channel is at on Rumble. This way they can follow you.
You can go to Rumble and look up the Dave XRPLion Show. All one word. You can also find me on beforeitsnews.com. You can go and see my posts on Twitter at XRPLion1, the numeral 1. But I will tell you, there's a huge reveal coming out tomorrow with regards to the debt code. And you'll see it actually has a new name. And I'm not gonna give it away right now, but I've been dropping little hints about it. But we did a 4.0. Yeah. And the one we're gonna reveal tomorrow is 5.0, and it's the biggest. It's probably the most important. Yeah. Yep.
By the way, there's some good news that just came down the pike on XDC. I just haven't had enough time to, grab all the news and read all the news. Do you know what that was all about? Because XDC is the token that Amber and I hold quite a bit of.
I do not know anything about that.
But we know it's definitely one of the ISOs for sure.
Yeah, it's one of the what I call the 7 dwarfs. So
okay.
Snow White and the 7 dwarfs.
Okay.
XRP Snow White. And then you have the workers.
Right.
All the rest of them.
Right. And we own a lot of XLM too. Yeah, XLM is definitely a token to own. There's no question about it as well. I mean, but it's not going to be the one, guys, regardless of what this little Chinese lady's telling you.
It was never created to be the one.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, you can go watch the movie Contact.
Yeah.
With Jodie Foster. It's the story about XRP and XLM. You can watch the Emoji Movie, the last 15 minutes, and it tells the story of how XRP saves the world. So
yeah,
it's not like people don't know about it. It's hiding in plain sight. It really is. And we're so blessed to have been given the privilege to even get to own it, because it could have been shut off.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
How many banks survived this, do you think?
How many banks?
How many banks will survive this?
Well, the intent right now is the only thing that survives is to help everybody transition over the next 2 to 3 years to fully understanding how to operate on the QFS. Because 99% of our money is going to sit on the QFS, not in a bank.
Right.
And after about 3 years, we'll be able to take care of everything right from our quantum computer or our quantum phone and never need a bank. It's like my grandkids. They're like, Papa, what's a bank? What's a bank, Papa? Just Venmo me the money. Papa, just hit me with PayPal. Now, all of those services are going to go away because of the FedNow system.
Right. We didn't talk about the central bank digital currency. I want to hit on that before we go. You're on the same page with me on the central bank digital currency, and there's some guy over in UK that keeps popping on some of my the Telegram channels who I would love to get on the show. I don't know. He's got an accent. He's a young guy. He's maybe 34, 35, 36 in that range. He's a young guy. And him and I seem to be on the same page. I think he got it from me. I would like to ask him that on the show, obviously. but he seems to be on the same page that the central bank digital currency, supposedly according to them, they've already made an announcement that it's not going to see the light of day.
Well, unfortunately, that's part of the FUD. That's the Luciferian deep state cabal, Khazarian mafia aspect of trying to keep control. That's how they were going to keep control, Mel, with central banks. Now, what we have are GBDCs, gold-backed digital currencies, around the world. All 209 nations signed on to NESARA on November 24th of 2022. The U.S. Treasury received $45 quadrillion in gold from the Asian elders on July 24th of 2022. And Trump was right there. The documents were signed. Now, and I'm glad we're circling back here. There is no need for a CBDC because there's really no need for a bank. They can't perform any services going forward. They can't charge fees. They're basically to facilitate the fact that for a short window of time, as everything rolls out, we need to be able to put money into a place to pay bills for a short period of time. And then we're going to know exactly how to take care of everything. You know, we're not going to have electricity bills anymore. That's one of the things on my decode coming out tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
We got Tesla free energy. In fact, the XRPL, Mel, is operating right now on free energy within Cheyenne Mountain. I mean, could you imagine if they...
This is the reason why I always say they don't want Trump to come back, the cabal, the Luciferians, because the amount of technology that was hidden from us is so staggering. Technology that we're not even going to be able to physically understand right away. There's going to be so many free energy technology modalities that you'll be confused as to which one you want to jump on first. Number one. Number two, I've been saying now, I've come up with the idea that I think is another idea that is highly plausible. And Trump doesn't want to give you flying cars. He wants to give you flying miniature condominiums where you have a bedroom, a shower, an area to eat. Okay. So all the car industry goes away because we're all driving an extension of the Model T Ford, which is antiquated technology, so that, you know, guys like your father can pull us over and give us speeding tickets. God bless his soul. Okay. Your father was a police officer. You know, I'm not too fond of police officers, especially when they, you know, break your, you know what. But the reality is, when you put that kind of technology into motion, just to stop and think for 1 second, just 1 second, your Airbnbs go away, your hotels.com go away, all your car manufacturers go away, all your parts of cars and airplanes, airplane manufacturers, everybody who works for the airline, everybody who works for the energy companies. I'm talking potentially 1 billion people, 2 billion people, literally like that, like this, 1 billion people, 2 billion people out of work. If they were to roll it out fast, they would have no choice but to do a universal basic income, but we would have to find something for these people to do so that that 5,000 or 6,000 or 7,000 a month that we're giving them as a stifle for every single month, it would have to physically, you know, be repaid with some kind of labor. We're not just going to just hand people a bunch of money and they could sit home and relax.
Well, the government has already established a 12-year program.
Okay. So do you think that I'm right that it would disrupt everything if they were to roll it out too fast? Do you think they're going to roll it out fast? Do you think they're going to roll it out slow?
Over 12 years.
12 years.
They've already made the announcement that anybody 18 to 26 is most likely going to go into the service. Now, we don't need a military, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because under NESARA, there can be no war. What
Right.
we need is a labor force operating within the confines of the military,
Right,
to take all the humanitarian money that they have and repair the infrastructure. That's a 12-year plan.
correct.
So imagine all these, these kids, 18, 19, 20, sitting in the basement at home, playing Fortnite and any other video game. Well, they're actually going to be the labor force to make sure that the infrastructure is rebuilt. And there is approximately 90 million of them right now.
Yeah. Yeah, by the way,
90 million.
We got a few people in the chat that don't like us too much. They say that we don't know what the hell we're talking about.
That's okay. Yeah, you're always gonna. Well, and what did Jesus tell his disciples, Mel? He said, "You'll
Yeah,
always have the poor among you,"
yeah.
meaning
So
those that aren't enlightened and aren't filled with the love of God.
yeah.
So
Well,
you and I are not doing this to make people feel bad, or
oh yeah.
to cause offense,
No, not at all.
or to toot our own horn. No, we're doing this because
No.
God put us in this position
Yeah.
and gave us a directive. Like he said, like he told me about you. He calls you his Gideon. Well, how many people were in Gideon's army? 300. How many battles did they fight? 0. God did all the work. They just showed up and God said, "Hey, watch what I'm going to do." And they all killed themselves. And Gideon's army just watched. But it was important to have the army for what it represented. Now, I'm a designated messenger. He gives me the revelation, he gives me the word, he gives me the authority to post it. It's not my opinion. I'm not doing it for my fame and glory. I'm doing it because I'm honoring my Father. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I would have no reason to be here.
Absolutely.
So each of us has a vital role. No one greater than anybody else.
Yeah.
But we have to come together, understanding the core information,
Yeah.
and not have 25 different variations because this person said this and this person said that. No, it all has to be vetted.
Absolutely.
I see so much information, Mel, that I take it back to the Lord. He tells me what's truth in there. That's what we post, and then it gets confirmed now pretty much right away.
Yeah.
I can do a post one day, and then it's being picked up the next day or hours away.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it isn't because of who I am, it's because of who he is.
All glory goes to God, my friend. That's for sure. I was an atheist for a long time. And when the man shows up with next to an XRP logo in the sky, and it's undeniable what this you're looking at, you say, "Okay, Lord, you got me. You want me to sell the people the XRP? I'm here. I did my job to the best of my ability. I believe I've done my job. There's going to be potentially. It doesn't matter whether you bought it from my broker. It doesn't matter whether you bought it from Uphold. If you were able to accumulate XRP, because I was able to drop enough breadcrumbs that made enough sense for you to go out there and get yourself some XRP and hold it until the end of time, you will not be denied. You're going to get your day in the sun. There's no question about it. And the guy upstairs doesn't choose people like me because we're good looking. They choose people like us because we have, huevos. You understand? And we will go no matter what, the extra mile against all odds. Okay?
We're conduits, Mel.
Yeah. Before I forget, guys, and you're gonna close us out in prayer. Before I forget, the January 21st. Okay, if you just got me, there's people coming in and out. There's still people coming in and out of the room, the live. January 21st, Staying Alive. There's gonna be a live event with Dr. Sandra, the inventor of the scalar wave technology that allows the body to heal the body of all kinds of disease. It's not the machine that heals you. It is the body that heals the body. It's the energy that's provided that the body recognizes, and it produces billions of cells, and it works for everything. Okay. So don't ask, does it work for diabetes type 2? Does it work for diabetes type 3? It works for everything. Okay. So, having said that, also we have a affiliate program of sort, a referral agent program. If you go to stayingalive.com, alive with 2 eyes, you can earn $25 worth of XRP completely free of charge. You all you have to do is choose your video of choice, get your link, put your link underneath the video, post it locally on social media in Brevard County, the surrounding counties, Florida, and anywhere in the United States, because they're coming to us because our prices are unbeatable, and they are. Okay. And we will send you out the $25 worth of XRP for every customer you get us. For every person that becomes a customer that buys a package or 2 hours, it doesn't matter. We'll send you $25. We pay out bi-weekly, and we can send it out to you in XRP. Now, this is an IQ test. If you want it in fiat, we'll send it out in fiat as well. But I'm going to give you an advice. Take it in XRP. Thank you, brother. Close us out in prayer, and we'll see you on the next one.
Absolutely. And I want to make a point here, Mel.
Yeah.
And that is when it comes to honoring the Father, we praise and we give thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
Prayer, and I'm not discounting prayer, so please understand. Prayer was actually praise. The enemy altered it. So we would pray, so we would hope, we would wish, and we would use the will of God as the determinator of whether we were good or bad. That's a lie from the pit of hell. Okay? When we know that the man upstairs is our Father, just as he had to put a mark on Cain, and it wasn't a physical mark, it was an awareness, it was knowledge that he needed to know. When we begin to change over to praise and thanksgiving, it acknowledges to God that we know who we are. And what it does is it allows the Holy Spirit to release the manifestation of what we've just given praise and thanksgiving for. So Mel, I'm going to lead us in praise and thanksgiving for what God has already done, so the manifestation is released.
Very
I want to make that really clear. Okay, Father, I just thank you so much for this time with Mel and all the listeners that are out there, and even those that were with us and decided to leave early. We just give you all the praise and all the thanksgiving, Father, for everything that you have already done. The Nasara, the Jasara, the redemption, the repatriation, the XRP buyback. Father, we know that you have already handled all that. And because of that, we can joyfully give you praise and thanksgiving in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, brother. Digital soldiers, you know what's expected of you. Do your job. Spread us out there. That's how we beat the algorithms, because there's some stuff going on even here on Rumble, believe it or not. There's a lot of patriots that they're pouring their hearts out, and they're not able to get past the threshold of 27,000, 28,000, 30,000. They're stuck at that mark, and they're doing fabulous work. Somebody's controlling something, we can beat them, but we got to work together. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.
God bless.
Hello, folks. My name is Mel Carmine, and we are right in the middle of a tectonic shift, the biggest wealth transfer that is going to hit this entire planet like a tsunami on steroids. This will never happen again, at least not in our lifetime. Many of you still have the opportunity to get in right now. Joining our Telegram group is perhaps the smartest thing you'll ever do, and it won't cost you a single dime. We have tens of thousands of patriots waiting for you, and they'll take you by the hand to teach you the ropes so that you don't get slaughtered. Not the global reset. This is not the global reset, but rather the quantum financial system reset, the one that's attached to Nasara Jasara. It's coming at us at 800 miles an hour. The question is, are you ready? Are you in position to receive wealth beyond your wildest dreams? There are 6 to 8 tokens that are going to completely and entirely dominate this landscape. And no, it's not Bitcoin or Ethereum. Join our Telegram group today, and don't forget to visit the Quantum Financial Systems Manual at QFS1776.com.
The thing that gives me the most anxiety is perhaps a cut that comes too soon from central banks.
Markets are expecting that they could move as soon as the next couple of months. We think that will be too soon.
We should be thinking about whether or not they'll have to restart the rate hike cycle.
I don't think we're at an inflection point at the moment.
Trend signals have finally turned long. It signals the end of the tightening cycle, and it suggests that we're going through a regime change.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz.
It is Payrolls Friday, live from New York City this morning. Good morning for our audience worldwide. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on TV and radio alongside Tom Keene and Lisa Abramowitz. I'm Jonathan Ferro. Your equity market this morning negative again by 0.2% with the S&P on a 4-day losing streak. The NASDAQ 100 making it day 5 in yesterday's session. TK, payrolls just around the corner.
Payrolls around the corner. I'm going to go right to the 20 lines of statistics and say average hourly earnings year over year, 3.9%. I don't know how that moves, but if it moves a certain way enough, maybe it affects the stock market, which is open grim for 2024.
It's been a struggle coming out of the gate for 2024, hasn't it? The longest daily losing streak on the NASDAQ now, going back to late 2022. The numbers today, Lisa, 175, the median estimate in our survey. The big banks on Wall Street grouped somewhere between 170 to 190.
With the whisper figure being 188,000 on the Bloomberg terminal. Is bad news, good news, and good news, bad news? Is that essentially the paradigm that we're in? We should have some discussions around that, because ultimately that's what we keep seeing. The better the data, the worse the reaction in markets.
It's been a drip feed of decent data in the last 24 hours. The ADP report better than expected. The jobless claims number, Tom, the right kind of downside surprise. Will payrolls follow that up to make it 3 out of 3?
We're desperate for information. I mean, we had this very strange fourth quarter. We've had the first days of the year, a huge challenge. Some people taking the data back to the 1970s. And then now what? And the what is we're begging for a narrative at 8:30 like I haven't seen in ages.
Some people begging for rate cuts. Bob Michael in the FT, check out this quote. This line jumps out, Bramo. Now that inflation has come down, before the next shock materializes, the Fed should start cutting rates. The Fed, Bramo, should start cutting.
That's what everybody is hoping. And that's what we can see baked into markets. And the Fed is starting to push back, but even more than the Fed, the data is starting to push back. So at what point do people wake up to the fact that the data is not confirming the idea that you have enough to start cutting rates, even surgically, especially if oil prices keep climbing? We do see some of these other kind of strengthening trends.
The great observer of this, Matthew Klein, was out on social, and he agrees with Bob Michael. And he says, it is a restrictive policy now, and they've got to get started. And John, the distinction here into the Fed meeting coverage that we're going to have in January is, do you have a measured approach by the Fed, or do they just at least come out? I don't know why they're waiting to March. Just come out in 10 days and say, okay, here's the first rate cut, and we'll see what how the narrative
based on the
unfolds.
data we've had so far. So let's think about what's happened in early 24. We've got this gap, TK, between the market and the perceived gap between the market and the Federal Reserve. And it's closing the other way with the market coming towards the Federal Reserve. Just a little bit early days, Tom, but off the back of decent data, just a drip feed of better than expected data, Lisa, in the last couple of days.
Double Line's Jeff Sherman yesterday on Bloomberg Television came out and said, it just seems it's a little optimistic today to think that it's going to happen so soon, talking about rate cuts as early as March. This is the issue. People have been able to bully the Fed into doing their bidding. They haven't been able to this time around and in this cycle. And this really is the key question. When do people start to realize their hopes don't necessarily create reality?
Jobless claims at 202 yesterday, 202,000. Let's turn to the price action. The scores going into payrolls. Payrolls about 2 hours and 27 minutes away. Equity futures coming down again by 0.2%. The dollar stronger. The euro just about holding on to 109, 109.13 on that currency pair. And yields on a 10-year through 4%, up by 4 basis points, Lisa. The 10-year 4.04% this morning.
The last time they closed above 4% was December 13th on the Fed meeting day. I am watching 8:30 a.m. non-farm payrolls report. John went over the headline numbers, the fact that the expectation is 175,000. I'm watching average hourly earnings. The year over year expectation is for it to come in at 3.9%, which is down from 4%, but still way too high for this Federal Reserve. That to me might indicate some sort of stickiness that the market will wake up to. At 10 a.m., ISM services data comes out. I just want to note, it has been in expansionary territory for every month except for one, going back to the emergence from the pandemic in May of 2020. Can we continue this expansion? At 1:30 p.m., Richmond Fed's president, Tom Barkin, is planning to speak. We also are going to be hearing throughout the show, we're very lucky to have former Fed officials Randy Krosner and Bill Dudley joining. To me, I'm actually more curious about the former Fed officials. What do you do with a really unclear moment that harkens maybe better back to the 1948 period rather than the 1970s?
Lisa, thanks for that. Looking forward to all of that still to come through this morning. With us around the table, Steve Whiting, Chief Investment Strategist and Chief Economist at Citi Global Wealth. Good morning, Steve. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Great to catch up with you, sir. Always is. I want to bring up that quote from Bob Michael at JP Morgan in the FT this morning. Just have a read of this. I want your response to it, if we can get it. Now that inflation has come down, before the next shock materializes, the Fed should start cutting rates. What do you think about that?
Well, again, conceptually, that sounds good. Is that something that the Federal Reserve is in the practice of doing? No. Not around this time. You've got to give them some time. Monetary policy is restrictive. Let's zoom out for a moment and just say what we've learned last year is that you don't have to crush the economy. You don't have to have an economic collapse to get the inflation rate lower, right? There were numerous pieces of what happened in the upheaval of the economy in the last few years that made price stability impossible. As we normalized, and including monetary policy, again, inflation's come down, and it will continue to slowly come down. Measured inflation this year, with a lot of confidence, it's going to come down. But, are we in an environment where the Federal Reserve is going to, again, preemptively say, well, let's quickly get back to a neutral position? Again, it sounds nice in practice, but again, the committee dynamics, these sorts of things, It's not going to happen that quickly.
I mean, you mentioned restriction, and others out there are talking about a Fed that's behind the curve here when looking at the markets. Does the Fed restriction do enough where it slows down the economy and gives us a more diminished corporate earnings outlook than the optimism that's out there right now?
Look, we think that things are a little different this time in one respect. Last year, if we take a look at 493 companies, take out the Mag 7, right, which had a really bad 2022. It looks like we had about a 6% EPS drop last year. That's consistent, again, certainly of no collapse in the economy, but a lot of things look like we've been in a mild recession. We haven't had a good growth year since 2021, right? Industrial production has been down for a year, especially around the world. Global trade was down nearly 10% at its low point. Lots of things in cyclical industries, housing, again, have all been really, really dragging quite weak for a good period of time. So I think we're in a position where earnings are recovering more broadly this year.
Right. Gina Martin Adams at Bloomberg agrees with you strongly on that. The basic idea to me, though, is if we are restrictive, can you get a growthy year? That to me is the heart of the matter.
I think it's a transition, and I think 2025 will be the year where we look back and say it was a stronger year. This fall in inflation is a sign that we can have a healthier economy. And that's where we're headed. And if we, again, we went from discounting, well, it's going to be doomsday and high inflation forever, to perfect Goldilocks very, very quickly. There's going to be some give and take in that. But people get very superstitious that this is happening at the beginning of the year.
Well, but to Tom's point, right, does it even matter if the Fed cuts in March, right, for the earnings recovery that you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to make a difference in the earnings environment. It may do a little bit of, difference in how the market trades in a very short period of time.
Okay, so when you start to look at your wager on the stock market, you are bullish on equal weight because it has been underperforming to such a degree relative to the other. The most going back to 1998. How much is that predicated on anything related to the Fed? How much is good news to really lean into the Citigroup view?
No. Look, if the economy unfolds as we expect, and again, we're saying ballpark, the Fed doesn't know when it's going to ease, right? So everybody's saying, well, it's going to be March, it's going to be May. Around mid-year, we think, again, just turning away from trying to crush the economy, turning away from trying to force down inflation and willing to sacrifice the economy with a recession. That's a big deal in itself. And, that's why we had a big fourth quarter, right, in the markets. And I think, again, if we come to grips, if the demand side of the economy is not collapsing and the production side is going to start to catch up with demand, we're going to have rising corporate profits this year. And I think it's going to be a better 2025. And so we will see that more companies and more sectors will have a better performance this year, but it's no 26% S&P return year.
We said that last year, and then we got one.
Well, who was saying that last year? I don't know about anybody saying that last year.
Well, we said no 26% gain, and then we got a 24% gain. Steve, let's talk about the state of the U.S. consumer. What is the state of the U.S. consumer now relative to where it was 12 months ago?
Well, look, it's been positives and negatives, and people have to have this balance. I mean, there's several different ingredients in this recipe. Some of them are sweet and some of them are sour. Okay, so we're seeing slowing employment growth. Let's remember in the employment report that we're about to see, December's mostly seasonal adjustment, especially January, right? So this is an environment where, again, there's some cyclical industries that are shedding employment at this particular moment in time. We will seasonally adjust that away. But the baseline, what we've been seeing is slower and slower gains for employment, but they are gains, right? Inflation has come down at a headline level, and that's meant for people who are already employed, right? A massive drag on their income growth is disappearing. You see plenty of signs that, again, the aggregate consumer, well, there are plenty of stretched consumers too. So I think, again, it's in this middle ground that's very hard for people, to say that there's very much going on here. But I think it's a mild upturn in probably a moderating consumer demand environment.
I went ballistic earlier this week on underweight, sell, all the other nuances of the securities business. Are you underweight the Mag 7? Are you selling the Mag 7? Are they a buy and hold?
When they fall, I think they're a buy. When they've had corrections, again, whether it's FANG or Mag 7, when they had significant corrections, they have great long-term earnings growth. I think you shouldn't be staking out a big position in Mag 7. I think that'll be more idiosyncratic. What I love is the fact that mid-cap growth companies are trading at 16 times when their long-term average is 21 times.
Final question, job guess in a couple of hours' time. What are you looking for?
I don't think that there's a problem with the consensus. I think, given the seasonal biases, I would be, slightly inclined to expect something slightly softer. The revisions alone, though, could make that almost immaterial.
175, the estimate today. Steve, good to catch up. Good to see you. Steve Whiting there of Citi Global Wealth. Let's go through the numbers together. 175K is the estimate in our survey. TK, the previous number, 199. Unemployment expected to come in at 3.8%. The previous number, 3.7. Wage growth. Do you want it month over month or year over year, TK? What do you like?
McKee would say month over month. I would say year over year, just because I don't care about the nuances.
I'll give you both.
Mr. McKee does.
0.3% for month over month, 0.4% previously.
Right.
The estimate for year over year, 3.9 versus 4% previously.
You bring up a really important point. Jason Furman at Harvard leading on this, which is how do you annualize all this mumbo jumbo we talk about? Do you look at 3-month annualized, 6-month, 12-month, whatever? I've always centered a tendency to look at 90 days and then take it annual. And Jason's got a big fancy formula that only he can understand that blends all that together.
The way to do it is to take the time frame that most justifies your thesis at the time being, and then to push that forward.
I think you're right.
And then to shift when you start to shift your thesis. That seems to be sort of the way it's been going. People are talking about 6-month annualized inflation going down below the Fed's target and all of a sudden calling victory. So, at what point is this the right kind of measure to look at? It's been a tricky one.
I don't know, but on wage growth, it's key. And I used to look at duration of unemployment and all these other cultural and social issues of the jobs report. I'm focused on the wage dynamic today.
I think a word that we heard yesterday, diffusion. TK, a word we might hear a little bit later as well. Just how broad-based are some of these gains in the jobs market right now? How healthy is that 175 if we do indeed get a 175? Kai Rukadonna of BNP Paribas really pointing out that maybe you're seeing some early weakness, Tom, on that side of things.
I think within the zeitgeist yesterday, people were noting manufacturing was a little soggy out there. That's not a big part of what Manhattan's looking at, but across the nation, there's some real pockets of slowdown.
We'll catch up with Morgan Stanley about that a little bit later this morning. Coming up on the program in the next hour, Priya Misra of JP Morgan Asset Management on the bond market and what they're looking for in the jobs report a little bit later this morning. The jobs report 2 hours and about 20 minutes away. The estimate 175K, the previous number 199. A bit of weakness to start the new year. Coming into Friday, we're on a 4-day losing streak on the S&P 500. We're negative again this morning. We're down 0.2%. From New York, good morning.
We have seen the public credit now that ISIS-K has taken for the attack in Iran. We're certainly in no position to doubt that. Difficult to make a quantitative or qualitative assessment of their strength based on this event, this one event. I would just say what we said before, which is ISIS-K does remain a viable terrorist threat.
That was US National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby speaking yesterday as Secretary of State Antony Blinken heads to the Middle East in an effort to ease rising tensions across the region. From New York City this morning, good morning to you all. It is Payrolls Friday, and the state of play at the moment, you're familiar with it. A losing streak building on the S&P 500 and on the NASDAQ as well. 4 days on the S&P, day 5 yesterday on the NASDAQ 100. This morning, pulling back again going into payrolls. We're negative here by 0.25%. Yields a bit higher by 4 or 5 basis points through 4% on a 10-year, 4.0438%. Over the last 24 hours, the data better than expected. An ADP report with an upside surprise, the right kind of downside surprise on jobless claims. TK laying the foundation maybe for more of the same a little bit later. That's what people might be looking out for at 8:30 Eastern time.
I don't know, Lisa mentioned the whisper number early on there as well, but I never trust this because it's a December report. I'm enough old fogey to go, did Bloomingdale's hire enough people? What did they do at Macy's? Which I know is completely off the mark, but that's like the collective memory of the 1st of January.
No, I think it's on the mark,
report.
totally, Tom. I think a lot of people pointed that out yesterday when we got jobless claims. It's that end of December kind of number. How much attention should you pay to it? The problem is, TK, as you know, the boat has become so loaded to the one side, looking for rate cuts, that you get this drip feed of better economic data. Just yesterday, do you get it again this morning, and you start to push the bets the other way?
Well, we're going to have to see, and I'm going to go right to January 11th, I believe it is, in the inflation report. This is the Fed starving for further information, like everybody else. Is Steve Whiting I just said we're data dependent. We'll have to see. We'll have that through the morning here as well. Right now, we look at our political economics, our geopolitical realities. No one more qualified to do that than Bobby Ghosh of Bloomberg Opinion, with decades of experience in the broader Eastern Mediterranean, including public service tours of duty in Iraq. Bobby, I want to start there. I got 3 or 4, 5, 6 geographies this morning, and I immediately thought of you when I saw Iranian murder, whatever it is, killings in Iraq, where you have such deep experience. Is our eye off the radar? Should we be looking at this relationship between Iraq and Iran? Sunni and Shia is the stereotype. Is that as important as maybe it should be?
Well, not so much, good morning, guys, not so much Sunni Shia, but certainly the relationship between Iran and a number of bad actors in Iraq, these militias, which happen to be Shia, that are supported and financed and armed by Iran, that have been over several years, but much more recently at a sort of increased pace, taking potshots, firing missiles and rockets and drones at U.S. positions within Iraq and in Syria. These are guys who basically do what Iran tells them. They may be Iraqi in nationality, but they serve Iran's purposes. They're similar to Hezbollah, they're similar to Hamas, they're similar to the Houthis. These are all part of this network of proxies and puppets that Iran uses. And it's not a coincidence that all of them are very active at this moment.
Bobby, our collective memory is a technocratic excellence in over the horizon we storm, like in Desert Storm some 30 years ago, I believe it was. That's not where we are now. It's almost as if it's a diverse and separated out war of religion. Do we know how to fight a religious war in America?
Well, what we're facing in the Middle East is a new kind of war. We're not facing a conventional army that will stand up and fight, and then if we defeat them, sign an armistice, sign a super peace, and then go away. That era is now over. What we're facing is a network of actors who are sort of hit and run is their kind of war. They tend to be all Shiite, but there are exceptions. Hamas, for instance, is not a Shiite group. That's primarily a Sunni group, although they are working with a bunch of other Shiite actors. So yes, they are all individually fired by religion, but they serve the interests of a nation state, and that nation state is Iran. And Iran has shown itself to be quite adept at pulling different kinds of strings. Oftentimes it's religion, sometimes it's just money, sometimes it's just giving a group of people the weapons and the training they need, even if they don't agree with you on religious grounds. That is what makes us all so much more complex. It's very hard to define, okay, if you belong to this group, then you are likely to be, this is what you believe, and therefore this is how you think about us. It's a much more complex landscape there now than it was during Desert Storm or during the attack on Iraq after 9/11. This is a much messier theater of conflict for the United States and for our allies.
Tom's asking the right questions because I think that a lot of us, we saw that ISIS claimed the blame for the attack in Iran. We were all thinking, where did ISIS come from? Wasn't this a proxy war between the West and Iran, or Israel and the US and Iran? What else is going on here? What is Tony Blinken going to do with this tinderbox that is incredibly complicated when he goes overseas to the Middle East for his 28th millionth time over the past couple of months?
So the ISIS arrival on the scene is completely unexpected, completely out of left field. These terrorist attacks in Iran on people mourning the death of Qasem Soleimani, who was killed by an American drone. ISIS has not mounted an attack of this ambition and this scale within Iran, and certainly not out of Afghanistan, which appears to be the case here. This is a rare instance where your enemy's enemy is also your enemy. I mean, Iran and ISIS are enemies. ISIS and the West and the United States are enemies. And Blinken is going into this highly complex situation with a very long wish list. From the Israelis, he wants what the Biden administration has wanted for several weeks now, which is go easier in Gaza. Start thinking about a ceasefire and start thinking about what happens after the ceasefire and how Gaza should be administered and how this enormous damage that is being done needs to be rebuilt. That's also what he's going to be asking of the Gulf Arab states, the oil states which have the resources to help with this. He's also going to Turkey, and I'm curious. I'd be curious to see what he says there. The last time he went there, he got his ears chewed out by the Turks for not including them in the discussions. He's going to Egypt, which has that border with Gaza in the south. That's where humanitarian aid needs to go in. He needs to get the Israelis to allow that humanitarian aid to go in, and he needs, again, everything begins when the shooting stops. So his number one priority has to be to get the shooting to stop. This would all be very difficult, even if it wasn't for the arrival of ISIS, for the increased activities of the Houthis in the Red Sea. We all know that's a vital global trade route. The entire world's 12%, I think, is the number of the whole world's trade passes through that one waterway. So this is no longer just something that only concerns the Middle East. This concerns everybody, everywhere.
Getting an update on that right now. Bobby, got to go. Bobby Gosh there of Bloomberg Opinion. Here are the headlines. An update from container shipping giant AP Moller-Maersk saying it's decided that all vessels due to transit through the Red Sea will be diverted south around the Cape of Good Hope for the foreseeable future. That's a change in language. The foreseeable future. The previous update, the last update we had from Maersk, said until further notice they would pause. Tom, now deciding to do so for the foreseeable future. Again, I'll just repeat that headline from container shipping giant AP Moller-Maersk, saying it's decided that all vessels due to transit through the Red Sea, Tom, will be diverted south around the Cape of Good Hope for the foreseeable future.
It's out of the 19th century, or maybe even the early 20th century, and there's a distinction here. It's a 1 week longer trip is a basic idea, and you go from 12,000 miles through Suez. This is coming from China to New York to 14,500 miles. So you had roughly 2,500 miles to the trip, but it's much more than that. It's just the Suez is so damn easy for everyone involved.
Just want to get to the quote from Maersk this morning. Here is the direct quote. The situation is constantly evolving and remains highly volatile, and all available intelligence at hand confirms that the security risk continues to be at a significantly elevated level. Much more on that still to come from New York City on this Payrolls Friday. Good morning. A 9-week winning streak on the S&P 500. We're about to snap that. The S&P on a 4-day losing streak. The Nasdaq, day 5. 5 days of losses in yesterday's session. This morning, we're negative again. We're down 0.4% on the Nasdaq, down 0.3% on the S&P 500. TK, a bit of weakness going into the weekend.
It was a little better tape yesterday. And, you know, to be clear, we were back to support or up to resistance, whatever you're looking at. But to be honest, in the last day, John, we started breaking through a lot of support levels. Yesterday is technically a different point than where we were guessing January 2 or January 3.
Lisa, you turn to the bond market, breaking some key levels there. A 4 handle, again, on a 10-year. Here's the state of play, 2-year, 10-year, 30-year. Yields higher by 4 or 5 basis points. The 10-year this morning, Lisa, 4.04%.
After the 1-2 punch yesterday of better than expected employment data, one after another, and then, of course, people expecting a pretty robust number today. There is this question of whether people are going to be worried about inflation for 2 reasons, not only a better than expected economy, but also potentially supply shocks. I know we're going to be talking about that coming up.
Just 18%. I always go back to this in the Fund Manager Survey from Bank of America. 18% of respondents looking for higher yields, Tom, this year.
Yeah,
that just tells you where the consensus was coming into 2024.
It's where the consensus is, and I'm going to let you decide now at 4.04%. You know, where are we going to go on a 3-ish basis? Is 375 or 360 the new 3.25% of just weeks ago? I mean, I think that's a really, really important point, to say the least.
Let's wrap it up with foreign exchange. Just a sneak peek of what's happening at the moment. The euro against the dollar looks a little something like this. Dollar strength, euro weakness, that currency pair negative 0.3%. 109.11. Under surveillance this morning, US payrolls due out in 2 hours' time. Bloomberg survey of economists expecting a print of 175,000 and an uptick to the unemployment rate to about 3.8%. Bloomberg economics leads are expecting an increase of 140,000 jobs, with gains mostly in government, healthcare and the hospitality sectors. That's going to be a focus, I think, of this report, Lisa. Just a sector breakdown. How broad-based or narrow are these gains to jobs growth?
I'm glad you went there and that you brought up Carl Cadana, because if it all is coming from specific sectors that have to hire right now, or government funding, which might not last considering some of the budgetary constraints, does this represent a strong market, or is this a sign of weakening under the hood that people need to pay attention to?
Well, 140 statistic there from Anna Wong and the team is germane. That's a slowdown, period. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Do you put a vector on it and get to where David Kelly is at JP Morgan of a negative non-farm payrolls report out there somewhere? Even with the 140 number today, I don't think we can go there yet. I mean, there's been enough robustness where if we get a soggy data point, it's just that, soggy.
Sarah House of Wells Fargo joining us in just a moment on that. An update on this story. Terrorist group ISIS claiming responsibility for an attack that killed more than 80 people in Iran this week. The attack coming as crowds gathered to mark the death of a top Iranian commander killed by the United States 4 years ago. Tom, tensions rising in the Middle East. Secretary of State Antony Blinken set for another round of shuttle diplomacy in the region.
I don't think there's enough airports to land in on shuttle diplomacy in the Eastern Mediterranean. There's so much going on, as we mentioned with Bobby Ghosh, with his just tangible expertise. This went to Baghdad. I mean, you go to Iraq as well as Iran for murder of Iranian officials. So to me, it's not just about single point diplomacy. It's a multitude of stops that Mr. Blinken has to make.
We're seeing the disruption already to global trade. This story very much linked to what we're talking about in the Middle East. The latest update from Maersk saying it's decided that all vessels due to transit the Red Sea will be diverted south around the Cape of Good Hope for the foreseeable future. Maersk saying it's encouraging customers, quote, to prepare for complications, Lisa, in the area to persist, and for there to be significant disruption to the global network.
And there already has been some adjustment, but how much more has to happen? And this, to me, is actually a really significant story that has been, and it's been percolating in the background. It hasn't been talked about. But there was a story that came out yesterday that showed how much the cost to ship from Asia to Northern Europe has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Increased 173% since December when the disruption started. How much further does it have to go if some of the consumers realize this isn't going to end anytime soon? And if Maersk thinks, well, we have to go this entire other route and hire all sorts of other people and stop in Cape Town and let them get some, fun or whatever the case may be. it's going to be more expensive.
It's going to be hugely more expensive. And Maersk is a legitimate company here out of Copenhagen, and with a legitimate double-digit shareholder return over the last decade. But John, sorry, EBITDA margin off the pandemic is giving way. How much more does it give away? Is they have to go another 2,500 miles, Shanghai to New York.
It's a massive question to ask here, Tom, how Houthi rebels have managed to basically shut down
That's the key thing.
this trade channel.
Stavridis has been way out front.
And you've got some serious countries with a big military presence trying to prevent this from happening, and seemingly they can't stop it.
I believe I saw from the Pentagon yesterday, I'm making this up, folks, it's jobs day, we're allowed to do that. I believe I saw 20 or 21 countries involved in an allied effort within the Red Sea.
And the only one from the Middle East is Bahrain, which is interesting because there are U.S. military bases there, but Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all of the others are not involved in trying to prevent this.
Yeah.
It just sort of highlights, and I got to say, the fact that ISIS came onto the scene from nowhere, seemingly, with his attack really highlights what a tinderbox the Middle East is right now, and how much you cannot predict with any linearity what's going to happen.
Our Washington team will follow Secretary Blinken's travels here through the weekend. Joining us now on this Jobs Friday, Sarah House, senior economist at Wells Fargo. Open question with all the heritage of Jay Bryson and John Sylvia and Wells Fargo. Sarah House, what is your key attribute in the jobs report at 8:30?
So I think we'll be looking at not just that overall rate of hiring, but I think looking more under the surface given this juncture of the cycle. So as you guys were discussing previously, what's the breadth of job growth? Is it being driven by just a few industries the way we have seen it over the past 6 months or so, or are we seeing some stabilization? Because I think that's one of the cracks that we're seeing underneath the surface of what's still a pretty decent rate of hiring, but underneath that surface, we are seeing some signs of concerns that make us worried about the sustainability of the jobs expansion that we've seen thus far.
Surveillance pro tip, John Farrell writes my questions. He puts them in the teleprompter, and he's doing that right now. What matters on average hourly earnings? John Farrell wants me to ask, is it month over month or year over year?
So I think it's year over year and also 3-month annualized, I think is probably the more salient point right now, just given that inflation is still very much a concern. And I think that's really driving the Fed's decisions right now. So I think what's happening in that more recent pace. So there's, of course, a lot of volatility in those average hourly earnings month to month, even with that 3-month annualized rate. But it at least gives you a more recent look than that year over year number, which tends to be a little bit smoother. But at the end of the day, this is just one data point on wages, and arguably it's not the most important. It is the most timely, but I think we see the Fed and other policymakers give much more weight to the employment cost numbers.
We're swapping questions this morning, Sarah. Tom wants to know about the quirks of December. Talk to us about the quirks of December. Just how reliable is that jobless claims number we got in the last 24 hours? How reliable would this data be a little bit later this morning?
Yeah, so with the jobless claims number, so of course seasonality is a huge issue this time of year, but even when you look at the non-seasonally adjusted numbers, they're running comfortably below the levels that we saw in 2017, 2018, 2019. And so I think it's pretty clear that layoffs remain low, but where we get concerned about is, well, what's happening on the other side? What's happening with those new hires? And we saw that with the JOLTS report, those gross hires coming down to the lowest rate since 2014. So, well, the jobless claims numbers, I think, are genuinely showing low layoffs, that there's still some concerns about the pace of hiring. You ask about some of the quirks of December particularly, I think we'll still get likely somewhat of a boost from the end of strikes coming from Mack Trucks, the casino strike in Detroit. And so you're still seeing some noise with that. Seasonals around holiday hiring is also can also be pretty difficult this time of year. So there's still going to be some noise in the December payroll numbers as well.
That said, Sarah, is there going to be anything that could give credence from an economic perspective to Fed rate cuts in March?
Well, I think if you see overall a faster weakening in terms of the payroll numbers, so if you get something, comfortably below consensus, if you see also, I think those wage numbers also indicating that that those labor costs continue to slow on trend, I think maybe that could boost the possibility. But I think when you look at where the Fed is right now, there really isn't that consensus for a March rate cut. And so I think that still looks a bit early in our view. If you look at some of the major data points, including today, we'll get three payrolls reports, 3 CPI, but only 2 PCE reports. And so I think there's still some concern that, well, we've seen a lot of progress on inflation. Can that be sustained?
I remember last year, Sarah, when people were laughing at the Fed's projections of where unemployment rates were going to end up, even with this disinflation. And actually, those unemployment rates were too high, given what we've seen so far. And I'm just wondering whether you buy into this idea that we could end up with a 4.1% unemployment rate, which is up just a touch from where we are now, and get inflation back down to 2% by the end of this year.
So we're a little bit more pessimistic on the unemployment side. So we think unemployment will be closer to 4.5% by the end of the year. But we also think that inflation is probably going to be a bit lower than what the Fed expects. So closer to about 2.2% by the end of next year. So I think you're still getting some benefits of just the normalization of supply chains, the housing softness feeding through to the official numbers as well. So that's helping, in addition to, I think, just the broader dampening in the demand picture that we're expecting in the months ahead.
Off the jobs report, what's your GDP call for now, Q4, and also for all of 2024?
Yeah, so for Q4, we're still looking for a pretty marked moderation, so somewhere closer to 1%. And for full year 2024, we're also looking for somewhere closer to 1%, but that's not going to be even throughout the year. So we still have a mild recession in our forecast, where we think there's a good chance that we'll get at least 1, maybe 2 negative quarters around mid-year. So that's weighing down that average that we're expecting for both the fourth quarter and still seeing growth here in Q1.
Sarah, just to recap, just quickly, which month have you got penciled in for that first cut from the Federal Reserve?
So right now we have a June cut, but I think just given that the inflation data has come in a little bit lower than expected, and then I think just the Fed's thinking has changed a little bit. They seem to be more comfortable with not only where rates are now, but where they are beginning to have that conversation around when the Fed, when they do eventually cut. I'd say the risks are probably skewed towards somewhat earlier than that call.
It certainly feels that way. Sarah, thanks for the update. Appreciate it. Happy New Year. Sarah House there of Wells Fargo on the data that comes out in a couple of hours' time later this morning. Payrolls coming up very shortly, and the Federal Reserve. Next move, the call from Wells Fargo, Tom. June, penciling in that first rate cut, but ultimately the risk that it comes sooner. Two things, two reasons. One is the data, but also the Fed's thinking around that data. Some things have shifted in the last few months.
Yeah, I think the Fed parlor game's in full swing right now. And you're right, it shifted. And to the point we heard earlier, the revisions today are maybe as important as the actual job statistic, the non-farm payroll statistic that we see. I'm way more focused, John, right now, away from the Fed story towards the real economy story. And for Sarah House to state there a 1% Q4 GDP, that's a tepid statistic. 1% GDP Q4, I don't know what percent of America that puts into agony, but it's a large number.
This at a time when I keep having one eye to this potential supply shock. I mean, how did they respond? I just want to go back to the Maersk story. I keep thinking about it. Maybe it's just because I'm being over dramatic, but to me, the idea that shipping costs are going to increase for the foreseeable future and potentially could increase significantly more as they reroute in this really massive way, you have to pay attention to that. That affects costs of goods, which have been one of the main inputs to the disinflation that we've seen.
We'll return to that news a little bit later this morning. Just to focus on the payrolls number, fantastic lineup later this morning, 8:45 Eastern time. We'll get the latest from Bill Dudley, the Bloomberg opinion columnist and former New York Fed president, to respond to the economic data, and TK a column a little bit earlier this week on bank regulation. We'll make some time for that a little bit later too.
Every word was of value. It was a blistering essay from the former head of the New York Fed. And John, I'm sorry, it's a really important column about whether there's still risks of the broader American banking system.
That analysis about 2 hours away. The jobs report just around the corner. The median estimate in our survey, 175,000. The price action has been weak to start the new year. 4-day losing streak on the S&P this morning. We're down 0.3.
Trend signals have finally turned long. And I think this is an epic signal for the market because we have been short for 9 quarters. This has been one of the longest shorts in trend following history over the last 20 to 40 years. And I think this is important because it signals the end of the tightening cycle, and it suggests that we're going through a regime change and that we need to start looking at the next phase of the bond market.
Katie Kaminsky of Alpha Simplex, the final 2 months of that last quarter, super painful, big move lower in 10-year yields. Your 10-year yield this morning shaping up as follows. Your 10-year yield a little bit higher and back through 4%, 4.0381% on the week. Yields higher by about 16 basis points. Worth framing it over the last couple of months, though. The 10-year yield was lower by more than 60 basis points in November, down close to 45 in December. And Tom, just encouraged by some better than expected data to start the new year, yields pushing in the other direction.
Well, yeah, and over 4%. And I guess, we're hugely data dependent. And again, how important is JP Morgan earnings? I mean, over the holiday, 1 week away, and they were saying they're capturing 1 out of 5 profit dollars in American banking. Maybe that's as big as the jobs report.
At the moment, I think the big number, TK, is the one from Apple. Early February, start the year,
in
2
the
downgrades.
Sales hysteria,
big
China,
run up through 2023. A lot of multiple expansion. Sales of the iPhone, not great. We'll see what the quarter looks like.
And to their credit, they write a blisteringly clear report when it comes out. I mean, their PR staff, their IR staff.
They get an A from you.
They get an A from me for clarity. Like you can actually read the thing. One of the things you can read is Anna Wong's economic literature, chief U.S. economist at Bloomberg Economics. Every report is at least 42 pages long, except when she stops traffic and tweets. Anna Wong joins now from Bloomberg Economics. You stopped me yesterday, Dr. Wong, with a spectacular tweet with the Anna Wong famous red pencil on the birth-death study of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We now go wonky on Jobs Day. Anna Wong, do we actually know what our job numbers are, or are they adjudged, are they changed by the births and the deaths in America?
Yeah, so, the BLS adjusts their each month survey number with a model estimated result from a model called birth-death model that aims to capture the job growth of small firms. And those estimations are based on benchmark results from a year ago. So what oftentimes happens is when you have turning points in the economy, you have a lot of volatilities with new firms and bankruptcies. As we did see in 2023, we had elevated bankruptcy rates. And that's when the birth and death model tends to overestimate the amount of job growth. And in 2023, 42% of the non-farm payroll gains is due to the estimated increase of jobs in the birth and death model. So I think it's open to indeed, people's skepticism on whether they're right.
Yeah. And we're getting tons of emails on this, that the job numbers are not nearly as rosy as people like you are telling us. Now you're at 140,000, so you're already beneath the survey for today. Are we going to sit here in March or July or November next year and say, oops, everybody got the small business birth-death model wrong, and the American labor economy is a lot weaker than we knew?
Well, I think the most important is what the Fed thinks. And I think the Fed is aware of the flaws with the birth and death model. And they actually do think that the real situation is weaker than what the job number thinks. So my tweet yesterday is actually coming from the Fed's Green Book back in 2001. So yes, the Fed is totally aware that the situation is not as rosy. And so this is why in turning points of the economy, the Fed tends to focus more on anecdotes and what their business contacts told them. And I think one of the key reasons for last December's Powell dovish pivot was because they put a lot more weight on what the district contacts have been telling them. And that was reflected in the Beige Book, which was the most downbeat Beige Book since 2020 in November 2023.
Anecdotally, Anna, though, we've seen a lot of pessimism. The sentiment has been really underwater for a while, and yet the economy has overperformed again and again, surprised everybody, a lot of people who were expecting recession last year, including yourself. Why have the numbers not cohered at all with that? Why do we think that they're going to show something different this time around?
Yeah, I think it's not clear at all that the economy did not slip into a recession in the last 3 months of last year yet.